These lights are absolutely blinding, so bear with me if I'm squinting for the next 15 minutes. Yeah, as Tim said, we're going to look at what do we expect for messaging for 2025, but also going to ask a couple of questions, such as are we getting the kind of evolution from SMS and existing messaging onto rich messaging? Are we getting this wrong? Do we need to kind of revisit things here? Legal bit, if you've got good eyesight, you can read the disclaimer. It's Mobilesquared. We've recently partnered with Kaleido Intelligence. We've formed a company called Saranta Holdings, but for the foreseeable, we shall remain as Mobilesquared, which we're very happy about. Didn't have time to do that, sorry about that. So yesterday we did a panel session with the MEF as a kind of spin-off, and we just kind of looked at where are we with fraud, with AIT, with pricing, and we had an hour to save SMS. So if you weren't there, you don't know, but we have saved SMS. So when we put the video up, have a look, you'll see that SMS is all fine now. We've saved it. I was going to put some key findings up, but I haven't had time, so sorry about that. But let's start with some good news. So total business messaging traffic, obviously very much aligned and follows up with what Gav was just saying. So as you can see, have we got a pointer? There we go. So in terms of SMS, it's not looking good, in all honesty. So over our forecast period up to 2029, we expect total SMS traffic to drop by about 26%. But the good news is we expect some very encouraging things from WhatsApp and from RCS. As you can see, RBM traffic we expect over the forecast period to grow by over 2,000%. And with WhatsApp on the API, which means it's for the large and medium-sized enterprises, we expect that to grow by over 1,000%. And again, you can just see how we split things out. So this is total traffic across the 3 channels, split by use case. You can see there. We've got marketing, utility, and authentication. You can see authentication is rather dominant at the moment. In actual fact, across SMS, we think, numbers show and the research shows that OTP accounts for about 50% of total traffic. So not only does it dominate international traffic, although it's declining because of the various things that are happening, it's also becoming quite a force in the domestic scene as well. So this is just a quick look in terms of where we are with A2P SMS traffic. So as you can see, we expect the traffic to drop by 26%, as I've mentioned, but international is not going to drop as much as we think, primarily because a lot of it's gone, and in actual fact, what's happened because of the high prices, the exclusivity agreements, the fraud that's associated with it, the AIT, the trashing, and all of that, basically means that the growth that we're projecting has gone. It never actually appeared. So what you can see is actually kind of more of a flat line in terms of international traffic than we should have seen. With domestic, over our forecast period, a lot of that we believe will go onto, as it will migrate onto other channels rather than kind of high prices. However, we'll come on to that because it's questionable what's going to happen. But as you can see here, selective lasering. What we're really looking at here is the fact that almost like the pandemic bubble has popped. The increase in traffic activity that we saw from 2020 onwards has almost kind of created a camel hump, and that's now gone. So what we're kind of almost seeing is almost kind of like pre-pandemic levels. So that's kind of how the market's changed over the last couple of years. So if you just look at international pricing, something that I bang on about, no one seems to listen, but where it's red, it means that the average rate in the market for that region is over 10 cents. So the global average rate for international pricing now is just over 10 cents. And what's really interesting is if you talk to the hyperscalers, they tell you that the higher the rate is, the lower the conversion rate. So probably in no other industry do you kind of pay a premium and get a worse service, but that's what's happening. So that's what we've got to kind of think about here. But again, if you kind of look at kind of where things are in terms of the price increases, that also gives you an indication of kind of where the fraudulent traffic's going. So we have a lot in the Middle East, in Asia, and now the storm cloud is moving across Africa, and we're starting to see glimpses now and a lot more activity in Latin America. So that's kind of what we expect to see in 2025. So this is one market out of all the data that we track, and we've split it out month on month. The blue is traffic, and this starts at January 2022 all the way to the present day. The red line is the international termination rate for that particular operator. So as you can see, as the price goes up, the traffic drops, and it continues to drop. So what's actually happening, certainly in this market and in other markets, that if an operator is trying to hit a certain amount of revenue, what they'll do is increase the price, traffic goes down, price goes up, traffic goes down. So again, you've got to think about it actually in terms of certainly international, there's a finite amount of traffic. Because most companies are fighting for the hyperscaler traffic. And all we're trying to do is win traffic from someone else. No one's really kind of actively trying to go out and grow the market. And there's a lot of potential organic growth there, but that's not happening. So this is the result, the net result of what's happening. This is from our research that looks at how damaging are the high prices and what impact is artificial intelligence. Scrap that, do that again. AIT, artificial inflation of traffic. So it shows I was listening about AI. What I think is really interesting is this graph here. So the big bit, about 37%, is people that believe that AIT is going to have a long-lasting, damaging, very damaging impact on the SMS industry. Everyone else is saying it's short-term or medium-term, and in fact, about 10% of people just go, it's just something else that the industry has to deal with. But what's interesting is that 2/3 then of the companies which are part of the survey, which is over 100 companies in this particular survey, don't see it as a long-lasting impact. But that suggests it probably will have a long-lasting impact. So again, it obviously depends on the market that you're at, because every market's different. But that's, I think, part of the issue, is that we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but if the message isn't getting through to the people that don't come to these events, there's absolutely no point in saying it. And again, if you're looking at pricing, 2/3 of people actually say that the pricing in international isn't sustainable. So if it's not sustainable, yet it's not damaging on AIT, then what's going on? Because there's a problem here. So here's the problem, SMS Armageddon. I don't want to over-dramatise things too much. However, but again, if you're an operator and you've got to hit certain levels, certain revenue levels, and if all of a sudden you've squeezed international as much as you can, what's next? The next is domestic. And if you start increasing the domestic rate in the same way, apply the same model that you have done with international, then we believe the floor of the market's going to go very, very rapidly. And I think that we're kind of at a kind of ticking time bomb. Again, don't want to be over dramatic, but that's kind of where we're going, because operators are going to hit certain targets. But we're not doing anything, or we're not doing enough, certainly with SMS, to maintain those targets. So that's kind of what we've got to think about, because the next step, the next logical step then, is to increase domestic. And once we go there, there's no coming back. So one thing that we started doing, we started talking about, this is our SMS health check. We do a business messaging health check. In fact, we do health checks of lots of things. But it's a way that we look at kind of 10 data points that we have to analyse the market. So this is the global view for SMS. We look at growth. We look at the firewall performance overall within the operators, the level of consumer fraud, enterprise fraud. We look at the total fraud. We look at the impact of an exclusivity agreement. We look at different pricing, the average pricing. We look at domestic pricing as well. We bring it all together and we have a view. So it's a bit like an Experian credit score. With -50, it's bad, really bad, and +50 is really good. So you can see kind of the delta here. We've got Sudan at the moment, it's the worst performing market, and we have, it's actually the UK. That's just the way it is, we haven't planned it. It's the best performing market. But what's quite interesting is there are, I think, 105 markets to the right of zero, so in reasonable health to good health, and obviously 195 or so that are in negative to very bad health. So the overall global score is 6.4. So when we split it out by region, you can see here that Africa is going into the red and moving into the red faster than any other region. Asia is kind of stabilizing based on kind of year-on-year analysis, as is the Middle East. You've got Latin America that's starting to tip more to the left. East Europe is wavering, going slightly more from yellow into orange, and West Europe is kind of yellow to green overall. This is kind of what's happening with Africa. So again, we've kind of tracked this back, and you can see kind of what's happening in the African region. So as prices increase, as more exclusivity agreements become prevalent across the region, obviously bad things start to happen. So what you can see here is that the average termination rate now in Africa is about 13 cents. And that's gone up since 8 cents this time last year. That's a massive increase. And you've now got 70 exclusivity agreements across Africa, 30 of which have an average ITR, international termination rate, in excess of 10 cents. Only five markets have a termination rate on average of less than 10 cents. So you kind of think, well, it's not looking good. Because obviously once you get to this stage, you're then looking at AIT, you're looking at trashing. But beyond that, to try and get around these high rates, you've then got more grey route traffic coming as well. You're looking at more blended rates, trying to bring those costs down. So overall, it's creating a really negative landscape. But it's continuing to happen. And again, what's driving, this is some research into RCS we did with the client, and trying to understand from the enterprise perspective what's driving the move to RCS to WhatsApp, for example, as well. And where we've highlighted it in the red, it's all about the increase in SMS fraud is driving requests for rich messaging, and the ones here on this side, they're just looking to migrate traffic over from RCS, or they want to migrate over. There's no compelling reason to do so. They just want to escape the madness of SMS. So this is kind of what it's creating. And again, we've split this out by all the markets that we do. So this is lost traffic over our period. So you can see it's growing, and it's growing big. And the blue is lost to other channels, so that includes kind of email, in-app, but it also means that they potentially, as a brand, stop using SMS altogether. You've got the dark green, which is lost to WhatsApp app, so that's the free for small and medium, so obviously that's not having a particularly massive impact, although it looks bigger than it probably actually is. The green is lost to WhatsApp API, and that's going to account for about 40% of lost traffic over our forecast period. So, WhatsApp is coming. The blue actually gives a sign of encouragement, and the purple and the pink at the top. So blue is RBM, and the pink is mobile identity. So again, if you're representing a carrier, there could be some positive signs here. You also you won't notice it. I don't know if this laser's going to work again. It works there, it doesn't work there. There we go. The black line, that's flash calling. So again, flash calling, lots of people talk about it. It's not really having much impact. It will in some markets, but not many markets. But again, it's all about how much the cost is on the international termination rate. So if you're no mobile operator, this is actually quite encouraging because, okay, you might be losing SMS traffic, but if you sort out your RBM strategy and mobile identity, you bring them together, potentially, just from a traffic perspective, you can then offset the decline in SMS by these other channels. But again, you've got to start thinking about this now, because the SMS decline's happening, it's not going to come back. So in actual fact, RCS, RBM is going to be a really strong channel for you moving forward, because it is starting to happen. But it comes at a price. So again, in terms of when we think about this evolution, in terms of moving traffic from SMS onto RCS, it's not that simple. Because what we're seeing, you can see it there, is in actual fact you've got RCS, P2P, RBM bypass. Try saying that after a few beers tonight. But what that means is, okay, so we've got all of this, bloody thing, RBM traffic, which is verified and clean. Brilliant. So RBM itself is a very clean channel. But if you kind of look at it holistically with RCS as well, you've got a lot of brands sending RBM messages over RCS on a P2P level. So we've got a grey route market already developing. And figures that we've got suggest it actually accounts for 10% already of RBM. So, and again, this is research that we did with the client, with OpenMind. The white paper is available. It's really interesting. So what are the fraud types in 2025 that are going to have the biggest impact on SMS and monetization? So you can see smishing is now number 1, grey routes number 2, SIM farms 3, AIT has been relegated to 4th. But we still talk about AIT, so it's still there, it's still bad. And we also said, well, what do you think are going to be the biggest threats to monetization in RBM in 2025? Grey routes, RCS smishing, AIT. So what we're actually seeing is, okay, we're moving traffic from one channel to another, but we're just shifting the fraud from one to another. So in actual fact, what we want to do is really sort out SMS, because that means that whatever's going to migrate over from SMS onto all these other channels will be cleaner. So all we're doing is putting dirty traffic from one thing onto another. So we've got to kind of think about this. So I think the strategy is kind of wrong at the moment. So ultimately, this is where it's coming down to. It's kind of like, we're kind of like doing this Viking business model. We don't care about the consequences. We're going in, we're going to take as much money as we can, and we're off. It doesn't matter what devastation and destruction will leave. in our path, in the wake of our path. That's it, that's what we're doing. So this, at the moment, what we're seeing, and it's painfully, it's so destructive, is that short-termism is so rife throughout this industry. We're not thinking longer term, because there's a lot of messages out there saying, actually, SMS, A2P SMS is dead. It's not, we're killing it. It doesn't have to die, it could go on and on and on. But then, so there are companies that are being misled. Okay, so we can't do about that, but we've still got to get this message out there. As Gav mentioned as well, the hyperscalers, they're massively scaling back. Some 50% of their traffic, majority are probably down 30, probably even 40% of their traffic. And that's who we're kind of all squabbling over, because we're not trying to grow the market. We're just kind of get whatever pocket of activity is left. Then we're looking at the impact of exclusivity agreements. What's being done about that? There's not enough transparency. So it's one thing that we're going to try and tackle. But the other thing, I think, is this Viking business model. We're just going to get what we can. And this is where I think operators, and this is where the message, I think, could be really strong. If you go to operators and say, you've got to flip it. Flip how you think about this. So if you enter an exclusivity agreement, it's not a case of how much can you charge up front, how much money can you make? Can you charge 30 cents? Someone mentioned 40 cents yesterday. Good luck on that one. You do that, your traffic's going to plummet. It will, because that's what's happening. But in actual fact, the question that the operators should say to these partners is, what's the market going to look like when you leave me? When our deal's finished in 12 months' time, in 24 months' time, however long it is, are you going to leave the market in a good state or in a mess? And that's what you should be thinking about. Because if it's left in a mess, you're not going to recover it. So it's going to continue in a mess. And there's always going to be another company that will step in and go, yeah, we'll sort that out for you. Because there always is. But what you to think about is actually, do I want this in the long term or not? Because this is still a really good channel. That's the trouble. Everyone says all SMS full of fraud. Actually, it's still pretty clean compared to all the other digital channels. So I just want to leave you with one last thought. So we're running a little competition. Don't get too excited. You can only win a bottle of champagne. So what we're doing is through the course of NWC, so it started with our client event yesterday at 11:30, all the way through to 5 o'clock CET on Thursday, calculate how much revenue will be lost from A2P SMS in that period. It's about 5.5 days. So I'll give you a little clue here. Not too big a clue. So lost spend, bearing in mind we started at 23 hours ago, so this figure here is $47.6 million. It counts for a period between now and the next 4 hours. I'm not going to give it to you because you can then calculate how much it will be. But use that, play around with some numbers. We've put it on LinkedIn. All you need to do is go to LinkedIn, follow me, whatever, or just go and find the page. Or you can email Nick at Mobilesquared or a name at Mobilesquared, and just give me a guess. And then whoever's closest, you'll win a bottle of champagne. I'm telling you now, it's a big figure and it's not good. But the fact is, since we've been here, in a day, roughly, we've lost $47.5 million. 1 day. There we go. So this is the impact. So if we don't act, this is what it's effectively costing the industry a day. And with that, thank you very much for listening.